Hello and welcome to Corenet Global Brazil webinar session. My name is Renato Fusaro and I am the VP of Corenet in Brazil. Just to remind you guys, today the webinar will be in English due to our speakers. Então, hoje o nosso webinar vai ser em inglês, não teremos em português, graças à nossa participante principal aqui, a nossa convidada de honra, ok? If it is your first time with Corenet Global, I just would like to introduce you to our association. Corenet Global is a no-profit corporate real estate association with executives in 48 countries who manage the real estate assets of large corporations. Corenet has presence in Brazil for the last 15 years, 16 years, and it is the chapter with most events per year. We are doing face-to-face meetings and we are doing webinars. You can follow us in the social medias. Maíra, can you put our social media in the next page? Thank you. Yeah, you can follow us in the social media. We are in the LinkedIn, we are in the Instagram, we are on Facebook, and we have a lot of presence also in YouTube that we can check all the webinars that we are doing. It is recorded and will be and are there. So this one will be there soon also. And we can check everything in our webpage, the brazil.corenetglobal.org. We are, next slide. Thank you, Maria. We are back to the normal. We are come back to the face-to-face meetings. But the idea is keep the webinars. The main idea to keep the webinars and bring international speakers to share with us great contents. We have webinars scheduled until November, so stay tuned. Next week, we'll talk about data. It's a very interesting subject nowadays because more than in the past, corporate real estate and IT is very connected. Technology is so important to check and evaluate how is the occupancy for the office space. So next week, we have a Simon Davis for Purpose Intent. We have a Kim Castle for CBRE, Joy Amidor to talk to us as a consultant for your own company to talk about CRE and workplace technology. We'll be in July 21, 5 p.m. Brazilian time. So after this webinar, we started to open the inscription to subscribe to participate with us, okay? And today I have the pleasure, to me it's a great pleasure to bring Tricia Souza to talk about environmental branding. I just would like you guys to pick up your phone to better interaction with the presentation. Tricia will make some questions and you will be able to answer and interact using your cell phone. So will be fun, be prepared, and we can answer the questions from Tricia and drive this presentation for better. So welcome, Trish.
Hi. How is everyone? As Ronaldo said, as soon as my screen can go up,
yep,
there we go. So there's the QR code. If everyone would take a moment, just scan that. It'd be very helpful. There are two sections in Slido. One is a Q&A. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please add them there. This is a pretty interesting app. It will update and all the questions will show up at the end. There is also, this presentation is intended to be interactive. So I will be posing questions to you guys, as well as there's a poll just so I can kind of figure out where everybody is coming from, so we can tailor this appropriately.
Yeah. So the people is connecting and walking to the app. Tricia, just would like to highlight why we are here now. So to me, the subject is very interesting, right, and important. Branding to me is the connection with the company culture. But most of the companies I work in on seeing new layouts for after COVID, the people come back to the office space, make some changes in the layout. And most of the companies only use, the big reception logo, some small one inside of the office space. company colors, to try to connect with the employees and transfer the company culture. But today we'll discuss how brand is more. It's much more than just this. This is so exciting. So can you start the presentation, share to us your thought about Trishi?
Perfect. Okay, so hi, I'm Trish. Let's talk about environmental branding. So I have been in this field for over 25 years. I'm trained as an architect, but have worked in identity design, branding, graphic design, exhibit design, you name it. About, I don't even want to guess how many clients, but in every part of the world, in most of the United States. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. Unfortunately, you might hear a little bit of character from the outside. So if you hear a random siren, I apologize in advance. My focus has been on placemaking and storytelling, and also always having people at the center to make sure that they can own it, support it, advocate, and potentially make appropriate changes. So here's where this QR code comes in. I told you a little bit about me. Can you guys tell me where you are from a professional standpoint, as well as where do you live on the planet? So give you a couple minutes. This is exciting. This is also how I'm going to tailor the presentation a little bit. So looks like we've got real estate and design, which makes sense.
Yeah, as a corporate real estate association, I have people from facilities, design, some architects, but also a lot of people from real estate market, you know, like transaction managers and everything. But I think it is very good to listen that to have people from Brazil and other countries also.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, now we're getting some facilities. I knew like these are people in change management. Okay, so we have a predominantly Brazil audience, which is great and not unexpected. Looks like we've got a pretty even mix. Oh, real estate's pulling ahead. This is great. Okay, so thank you for that. It helps me a lot. So everyone here works in the built environment. You all have some kind of participation in how people either work or live. So I wanted to just kind of level set. As Renato said, most people see branding as the Nike swoosh, you know, like it's the mascot, the logo, the colors, the slogans, the taglines, the campaigns, but really that are deliverables that support the brand. Branding is an emotional connection or an attachment to an idea, concept, place, thing, or person. You hear a lot of people talk about their personal brand or the brand of the place when you're talking about real estate developments. The background image was a project that I did outside of New Delhi for a developer. This was kind of their social area, and they called it Cyber Hub. And it was all about getting people to interact with each other from these corporate office spaces. It was a lot of landscape. It was amphitheaters, seating, hospitality, but the identity just reinforced everything else. So that is branding. Now here's another poll. How would you define environmental branding? And I kind of gave some of it away, but I'm curious on, is this term new to you? Have you worked with people before? How do you define it? So someone's got to start typing. We got one person.
And if you guys would like to do in Portuguese, don't worry. I can try to translate to Tricia. Don't worry.
Okay, that's great. Whatever is easiest. And by the way, this is iced tea. Just in case. Okay, if anyone could not use the word brand on it, that'd be great.
I love this one.
Yeah, agreeing with all of it. I also think it's interesting that they assign pink to anyone whose name is Jessica. Okay, thank you for that. This is my definition. So environmental branding is an immersive and holistic experience. So it's everything that integrates the brand mission, vision, and values, not so much the deliverables, with the spatial context and any relevant user interaction. So physical, digital, cultural. So that is how people behave. So every single different interaction. The background picture was a park that I had the pleasure of working on ages ago. It was in a former shipyard. It now houses a big box store, and part of their mandate with the city is that they had to show some of the history. So those are all winches and clamps and everything that talked about the New York City harbor, but now in a park. And ladies and gentlemen, Brooklyn is honking. So some additional activations. As I mentioned with the park, we have historical timelines, exhibits, product displays, super graphics, commissioned artwork. The signage and identification, those are those logos that you see in front of everyone's reception desk or behind someone's reception desk. Anything dealing with communication is branding, whether that's on an app, whether that's on a digital screen, whether that is on a wall. Anything that is architectural, so your forms, your finishes, your colors, your lighting, even how you define wayfinding can be a branded experience if it takes you past certain things and directs you into an experience. Uniforms, how people are presented. Just because it's not on a wall, it's someone walking through a space, that's also branding. Anything that involves training, your corporate culture, or your culture in general. How do you want people to show up and interact with others? As well as any kind of digital app, portal, intranet, PowerPoint presentations, you name it. So, what value do you think environmental branding brings to an experience? With everything that I just said, how does value get recorded? What is the value add for clients to really create a robust environmental branding program for these offices? As Renato said, a lot of people are just putting their identity up and painting in a color that doesn't truly interact. That's not the true expression of the brand. That I feel is pretty much minimal. But how can you convince other people that what value it brings is appropriate?
Yeah, I just remember when people using the app here, I just remember that I worked several years in a bank, an American bank, and they have a very large list of piece of arts or work of arts, but nothing that is connected with
Correct.
the company. So they lost the opportunity to bring you something that was connected with the company to improve the branding in the building. So they spend a lot of money, right? It's very expensive piece of art. Some of them was millions of reais, local currency, but it was like no connection with the branding. And in the opposite, other companies I work at, that you work at, and we work together on this company, was every picture in the wall have some connection with products or company. So I just would like to explore this a little more, because it looks like a great idea that people see something that don't have the logo, but the people identify as something that belongs to the purpose for the company, something like that.
And it doesn't have to be overt. It can be subtle too. And I think that's one of the things that people don't really get, that it could be a certain pattern that's embedded into a carpet. that then shows up on an annual report, and how it all kind of ties together. So it's not, doesn't have to be a big expansive component, but it does connect to ownership.
Exactly.
I just want to see what these two people are typing.
I like this one, feeling of belonging.
Exactly. Exactly. You want to retain employees. You want to bring on new employees. You want people to feel like they are connected. So we pretty much have mentioned these, but I just wanted to make sure if we didn't, apologies on the background noise, that we get this. So reminders of company purpose, intentional and directed messaging, encouragement of company culture, building pride, teams, communities. And then there's also this thing called change management and behavioral management. And if you are blending two companies together, how do you get that commonality to take root? So there's lots of different agendas, initiatives that can be built into how the branding takes place.
Yeah, and I think it's very important this nowadays, because in the past it was very simple. So in the past, for instance, I need to go to the office to work. So the exposure to the culture was every single day, 80 hours. So nowadays, we have some employees that are remote or hybrid. They can go in the office 2 or 3 days of the year. So, 2 or 2 days for the week. And so the exposure is much less. So every opportunity to bring the culture of the company in the brain is much more important, because people stay less time in the office space, right?
Exactly. And then you can also take this into the digital realm. If there's a way that you can customize like your Slack pages or your internal intranet that then supports a digital and physical blending of interactions. So I know that we're focusing on kind of the physical, but there's also larger things that can be integrated that supports, integrates, and augments these experiences. So just to let everybody know, this is a group effort. This isn't just we're hiring the branding person, let them do it. It has to be collaborative, and it has to be owned internally. You can give an external consultant direction, but in a couple, say in a year, the work's done. How is it maintained? How is it integrated and continually reinforced? So from a consultant team, you typically have your designers, your architects, your branding strategy people, as well as internal company marketing, their business strategies, communications, potentially internal and external change management, potentially internal external technology, you name it. Every single thing can support the brand. And really, really successful projects have really robust teams. So this is where I'm going to get into some of the fun visuals. But what I've learned over the 25 years is it's really exploration, intention, learning, and listening. Because I recall in one client that was like, oh, you're the design diva from New York. You're going to tell us what to do. And it's like, no, we're going to talk about it. I need to know what your local expression is. I need to know what your local culture is. I understand the larger corporate culture, but what does this local office have to say that's in addition? So it's really about co-creating and making sure that people feel that belonging is key. This is the only slide I'm going to show of a logo. This was a development that we did in Connecticut, and we'd spent it's on the waterfront, and we ended up using waterproof materials because hurricanes and other wonderful storms go by that can also give the moire effect of water. So everything about it, the tectonics, the textures, the colors, all supported this kind of experience that they wanted to provide, that yes, you're in a corporate office park, but yet you're also on the water, and we're giving all of those experiences an equal footing. And that's how the graphics and the branding took place. Again, if you have any questions throughout any of this, because I feel like I'm talking to a screen, and I am, make sure you go into the Slido, into the Q&A section, and type in your questions. And at the end, they'll all be compiled, and I can answer anything.
So we can use I saw some companies that just use the logo, but the idea from environmental branding, and they use the logo, but using more texture, other ways to show the logo than just the formal one. Some companies have kind of a very close the logo is standard, and you must use this color, you must use this texture. So the idea is bring it more than just the formal one, right?
Exactly. And we still make all those requirements for all the things for branding too, because you want to make sure that if you're doing, say, an annual report or a website, that there are connectivities. So things aren't done in a vacuum, but you want to make sure you consider your application and your audience. So this is a project that was done for the ministries in Kuwait. It was basically a large office building that held, I think, 16 of their governmental agencies. And we worked very closely with an architect on developing patterns and textures and color palettes. So you can see where the signage is actually the same patterning that you see on the mashariba, which are those wood panels that are little balconettes within this atrium. So everything connects. So they wanted to make sure that it's a single experience. So even though this is wayfinding and signage, it still connects to a larger brand experience. This was also, I believe, slated to be used on their website. On even, I think the landscape had these patterns carved into their trees or their topiaries. So what you have effect on is circulation. You have effect on building. It's, again, that emotional connection.
Yeah, it's not. So I just would like to explore a little more of these, Tricia. So it's not only the company culture, but the local.
Oh, exactly.
The partner that we can see here it's very local one. Like I just remember some projects that we work together that have a company culture, but also have a local culture. Like the São Paulo office has some local monuments, or something in Mexico has Mexico partners. So what's very interesting is not only is that this help the people feel more comfortable with closer to the local culture, because most of the companies are global but have a local stuffs, right?
Yes, and this is the government of Kuwait, so they definitely wanted to showcase their local culture. And they're like, well, again, we have this designer from New York, but what we did is we really explored and really made sure that we went to the museums and we went to any cultural component based on conversations we had, especially our stakeholders were the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Health on this. So we had very different perspectives, but there was so much pride that needed to be integrated.
Got it. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was very cool.
It's beautiful.
This is a project that was done for a developer in Washington, D.C. And part of the mandate from, the district was, this was a historic structure, this little gateway wall. It's adjacent to the Washington Navy Yard. And they wanted to showcase what was done in this space that no longer is part of the Washington Navy Yard. But during World War II, it's where they made ammunitions. And they wanted to tell the story of how you had multiple genders, you had multiple races, all coming together for the war effort, but they wanted to showcase the wall because it's a historical structure, it's landmarked. So we have this transparency. We also wanted to make sure that everyone was considered equal. They're all based on historic photographs, and they wanted to educate the population in this neighborhood that was quickly gentrifying, but still paying homage to those that had been there for generations. So is this public art? Yes. Is this also a branded experience? Yes. So it all kind of falls together. So as Renato said, you can have artwork, but tie it to a story. Tie it to things people can feel a sense of belonging to, that they can identify with. I had heard from conversations with the developer that people's grandparents were in the photos and they came and they put flowers at the bottom of it. Like there's a real ownership.
Connection, right?
Yeah, and it's really great. And we worked with a public artist. This was his first real commission. There was a lot of hand-holding, but it was amazing. And there was so much love for this. And it's like in a courtyard next to a much needed grocery store, in a public space where this area didn't have much public spaces. So it really became rooted as part of a community, of this new community.
Yeah, that's great.
So again, it's not a logo behind a reception desk.
Exactly. It's more than this, right?
Absolutely. This is a project for Columbia University. This is their graduate school of public health. There are 13 stories. They're trying to advocate people to take the stairs. There's also the island in Manhattan is 13 miles long. So we basically chopped up the island, took out historical fun facts on public health. You had Typhoid Mary. You had all the things, all the contributions that through our mistakes that we learned from, that public health policies were created from. So you have all these graduate students. You got a couple elevators that sometimes works and sometimes didn't, but they wanted to activate the stairs. And on every tour for new students as well as keynote speakers, they take the stairs and they read. It was also a collaboration between a series of graduate students to write all of the histories. And it was probably one of my favorite projects. It was probably one of the most difficult to install. It is a fire rated stair. We needed to find an appropriate effect. I believe this is the only vinyl that is fire rated. They also wanted it to be a green material. There was a lot of research on this one, but absolutely love it. And again, it's not your typical, here's a color. They did do the stairs in blue, which is Columbia's color. So there is a little bit of that, but it is more of an interactive kind of an experience. You can walk through this staircase many times and maybe you'll catch something new on each turn.
Yeah, very, very interesting location to make a branding, right? So it's so uncommon, right? The stairs.
Yeah.
But it's great. I love the idea.
Yes.
Make more easy to get the stairs. Oh, I know this one.
Yes. So this is where Renato and I met, amongst other projects. While at Johnson & Johnson, we were tasked with creating 1J&Js, which were blending the multiple different business units, consumer, pharmaceutical, and med device. Things are changing now. We're both not working there, but what we tried to do is bring all of these different business units in multiple high-rise buildings throughout major cities. So I believe in Mexico City, they consolidated, I think, 8 or 10 pieces of real estate. I'm not sure on the exact numbers.
4 leased and 2 owned. So we consolidate everything in just one building.
Okay.
And but the same in Bogota was like 4 buildings. One of the business I think was in the very famous building that was the Google one, and the people don't want to go to the new one because it was another neighborhood. A long story, right, Trish? But
Yes.
I think the every time that people go to this new JJ concept, that the people enter and say, "Wow, this is amazing! This is so different," and most of this element come from local current culture together with the company culture. So it was like a mix that I like to see on this wall. Like the colors also is pretty much amazing. If I remember, Colombia was pretty much like they use the colors for the
Yes.
local Indian tribe, stuff like that, right?
Yes. So each floor had a different indigenous connectivity in these business lounges or lounge. They're not the business lounges, but they're basically the cafe lounge spaces. Throughout the workplace, there was a little bit more J&J specific branding. But what we wanted to do is where people congregated to kind of socialize or have impromptu conversations as part of the workplace experience model, these spaces were supposed to be reflective of the cultures that you were residing within. We did have one at the time illustrator that did all the illustrations. So where what he did here in Bogota, he also did different ones in Stockholm that were reflective of that culture and population, as well as New Jersey in the United States. So we really love the idea that we could play with these illustrations more. Here we have them dimensional. So again, is this public art? Is this a commissioned mural? Is this a branded statement? Is this a commitment to the community that this particular corporate branch is located in? Absolutely, it's all of the above.
Yeah.
So
just remember the one in Mexico City that we use local partners from different regions for the Mexico, also the colors. And in Sao Paulo, we use this, and we have we make a joke, Brazilians love the joke. So we have like a kind of a corner that say, oh, this is Rio Grande do Sul, the Gaúcho corner, because it has some branding for Rio Grande do Sul. Another one is Rio. The other corner is for Sao Paulo corner, the Paulista corner. So it's pretty much we identify the local culture and also the branding, most of the elements that we saw in the common area. So I love the concept.
And I'm also going to add the one thing I didn't mention before is nomenclature and naming. So whether or not you want to name a conference room after a certain region, or it connects to another part of the corporate culture, all of that connects to the brand. So where, again, it's not just the logo behind the desk. And there's so many different ways that you can express this. You can be as integrated as possible. Sometimes that's too overwhelming, or maybe you simplify and you just hit a more specific point. But the work that we did with Johnson & Johnson, especially throughout Latin America, I'm very proud of. I think that it really reflects the commitment to the cultures as well as to the products and to the credo, which is their backbone. That's what they believe in. That is their mission, vision extraordinaire. So it's how all of these elements tie together.
Yeah, just a question that comes from WhatsApp here in Portuguese. I try to translate. It's pretty much like how you can mix the local culture and the corporate culture, corporate colors, with the biophilia that looks like more focus in the natural. How you mix that in the brain? Do you have any kind of no rules or standard, but how you can measure it? Because a lot of offices, companies asking for have more biophilia to feel like you are in a very green. And so, like I give an example for the office I work nowadays at Cargill. We trade in commodities, so easy. Everything is green or brown because it's easy. But if I remember some office space that I gone to Johnson, if I remember the São Paulo one, some floors were the pharmaco and was a lot of white and light blue, and the people make a joke, oh, looks like a hospital. Is missing biophilia because it's missing green, have no plants, so, like trees, they don't have this kind of biophilia inside. So how you guys can mix this corporate colors plus the biophilia on this?
So typically, there's two things with biophilia. People want greenery in offices because it creates a better sense of well-being for inhabitants. So that's just putting plants around. True biophilia is an overall connection of materials, a commitment to sustainability at its core, right? So if the corporate culture has a sustainability, if any of their corporate responsibility components connect to advocacy for the environment, for conservation, that gets blended into that corporate messaging, into that requirement. So I can understand the question sounds a little bit more in the tactile approach on like, if my corporate colors are orange, how do I stick a green plant next to that and balance it out and not have it be, or mustard yellow?
Stuff like that, yeah.
So
like lighty blue and white with the green.
So that gets into aesthetics, right? And the aesthetics need to follow the requirement of the brand intention. So typically what people do is they just stick a bunch of plastic plants around, which to me isn't biophilia. That's fossil fuels in the form of a plant, a fake plant.
Yeah.
So it gets down to commitment. And is there a commitment from the organization to take care of plants? Is there a commitment to change the water filter on the water fountain? Is there a commitment to making sure that their moss wall stays alive and there's the proper humidity? So I would say that it's a larger commitment than just sticking something someplace. So I don't know if I'm answering that question in the way that they want it to be answered, but biophilia tends to be one of those things that you need to weigh the cost and the effort, and is it something that they want to continue with?
Exactly. Okay.
People could say that illustration of an orchid, and that I believe that's a condor, is that biophilia?
Yeah.
And I would say no, it's a representation of plant and animal. Cool. So it really depends on how each company defines it.
Nice.
So this is not a plug for Spider-Man. This is a company in New Jersey that creates pigments or mines pigments. This is their product wall. And the interesting thing about this particular project is that you see the three parts. You have the color, you have the actual product, and then you see where it manifests. And the even better part of this is that we had our printer use their pigments. So it's not just a story, it's a commitment. Everything that we did for this particular company, and this was a while ago, but everything we did, all the paints, everything were their product. So this was a showstopper for them. And this was their reception area.
That's a great.
So it's one thing like, can we show off our stuff? But then it's like, oh, well, let's take that further. How do we really show their stuff off?
Exactly. And how you can take advantage for the company products, right? Because they are doing colors, so amazing. You can do the best colors possible.
And then we had so their color is red, and we had a large portal, and it was in a red lacquer. And, the question is, so how good are your pigments? Are these going to start fading at some point? It was all about the brand integrity of showcasing their work, which is great, which I think is a really, really a lovely thing. If you have that, do it. This is going to seem a little bit more like it's just identification, but this is Queens College. They have a huge, huge alumni that are comedians, musicians. Paul Simon went here, and they give back to the community, and they created an arts complex. They wanted it branded differently. They wanted this to become a place for people to come to. In Queens, it is one of the places that is advertised as an entertainment and arts center. So everything was a little bit bigger. The Culpeper Center for the Arts, there was an outside amphitheater. There were several different auditoriums, theaters, performance spaces, artist studios, and it was big and bold, and you could see it from the freeway that was in front of it. Everything was a consideration. So yes, this is signage, but it reflects the brand intention, which is to give back to the community, to make sure the community knows it's there. So you can see the sign, Seinfeld's back. Seinfeld went to Queens College. So it was really about making sure that their alumni felt that they were seen. It also helped with their development and fundraising efforts as well. So there's always more to the project than just typically the immediate ask.
Yeah, I just remember when I worked in a bank, we had a lot of focus in the branding for the branches, of course. So every time that I'm looking for a branch was location, 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 and try to use the branding most we can. So you have this kind of example that this is close to the freeway. So it's very good to use the best branding is possible to the neighborhood know that you guys are there, or at least if you go for the car, you can see this far from the freeway. So I love the idea to explore these. And so unfortunately, here in São Paulo, we have some restriction for this branding. But other offices that I did that have no restriction, we try to put this in the top of the building, you know, the name of the company, just because we lease more floors than other, and we can put a branding there to people know that we are there. I love the idea.
So zoning is always an issue in regulations. I know we're running out of time. I want to just go through a couple really quickly. You had said banks. This is a prototype bank for PNC Bank. We did all their merchandising, all of their signage. We worked with the architects on all the finishes. So it was really about the holistic experience. We talked to all of their tellers. Anyone who worked there had a behavioral component back in the day, but it was really about introducing PNC to these regions in the United States that didn't have this bank. And they wanted to be bold. They did not want to come across as kind of the older stodgy banks. So there was a lot of intentionality behind almost every piece. And most of this was environmental friendly materials back in the day. So they really made their commitment where you're not seeing a lot of plants. Again, this was the prototype. I'm sure that there would be a lot of plants in the final branches, but they wanted to make sure that sustainability was a highlight for them.
Yeah. So this is also other item that people ask you to have in the branding all the time, right? Sustainability.
Exactly.
So not only the materials, but to show to the community or who is looking to the branding that we have some focus on sustainability, right?
Exactly. So I'm going to end with this particular slide. This is branding in kind of the truest form of identity. Pentagram Design did NYU's rebrand. They did the new identity. They did the new color palette. Unfortunately, they did not get down to the minutia. And Stern Business School reached out to us and asked us for, how do we do this? How do we talk about our different MBA programs? How do we talk about our initiatives? And so we went through this isn't environmental, this is full-on branding, and kind of broke down all of those components. But being a reformed architect, I was like, okay, how do we put this into play? Similar to what we're doing virtually, before COVID, people did in person. They wanted to make sure these auditoriums, there would always be a slice of their identity in every photograph. What you're seeing now is a series of basically window blinds that are on hydraulics that drop down and can be configured based if someone's sitting in chairs, having kind of a panel or an informal chat, whether someone's at the podium, whether there's a panel discussion. How do you make sure that your branding, whether it's from, as we talked about, from a car from across the road, or a participant that is, posting onto social media, that they understand that Alan Greenspan is speaking at NYU Stern. I mean, ideally now they would want the hashtag on it, but how do they make sure that everything is visual?
Yeah, this is something interesting that you told now, Trish. Like nowadays, the social media and photos is so important to the branding.
Absolutely.
Right? Because in the past it was like not so many photos, but nowadays everyone with a cell phone can take 300 pictures for something, and the branding could be in some locations that you never thinking about, right? They could be in a Facebook page for someone, have some branding there. How you guys explore these?
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is that you want to control your messaging too. So if you can control the narrative, you start off, just like I was saying to everybody, please scan the QR code. If you say we're using this particular hashtag, so it's searchable, it's ownable. You try to figure out how you can empower your audience to help form your messages, even though you're kind of dictating them, but that's how you want to get your marketing across. So, because you're crowdsourcing your marketing, how can you make sure that you are giving them the proper tools that help you on your mission, vision, and intention for that particular event?
Great.
All right. This is another cool exhibit. I'm going to pass that because I want to make sure that we've got enough time. We've got about 10 minutes. Okay, so I have 3 questions. What is LATAM? That's Latin America.
Yeah, I think this probably ask if you have more example for Latin America. I think I can share with Jessica other examples for office spaces here in Latin America that have some branding, that have more focus than just Johnson & Johnson that you share here. But I think we have other examples that I can share with Jessica. But I just received another question. Sometimes questions come from WhatsApp and other ones. So
Perfect.
Can you share a little more about these firms? Because I have some good firms that can at least show the people more ideas regarding branding, probably.
Okay, perfect. So what I unfortunately have not worked with any firms in Brazil. I've met Ronald Shakespeare from Desenho Shakespeare in Buenos Aires a couple times, but these are firms that I, through research, have found, or at least individuals that are involved in the environmental branding, environmental graphic design region. So if you want to take a screenshot of this and do a little bit more on your own, it seems like some of them may have shut down during COVID, but they're on LinkedIn. You can figure out who's doing what. But Desenho Shakespeare has done some amazing stuff around the world as well as in the region. So this was just my take, because I'm in New York City. I want you guys to do as much as you can locally, but I really want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not just a very specific thing. It's not taught in schools. You typically, so I'm a recovering architect that has an understanding of 2D space, 3D space. I can say digital's not my forte, but I collaborate with those that it is. Just like someone in real estate collaborates with someone in development and someone in marketing, and you get the job done. And that is important because you want to make sure the teamwork is there, as well as having the client's end on it. So there's my LinkedIn. Please connect with me. Please reach out if you have any questions that aren't answered on this. If there's any Portuguese that needs to be translated, you got me for a couple more minutes. How can I help?
Yeah, Trish, one of the questions that come was pretty much like you talk about you are architect, but looks like to work on this environmental branding must have like a, I don't know how to say this in English, like have a artistic perspective, you know, a vision. Sometimes we see people that are not only the architect, but have more focus in not artistic, but some pieces of marketing, you know, how communicate better. So what is the mix that you saw in other companies that you saw? Oh, well, we have people from communication, people from facilities, like you talk about facilities, how facilities, but to have people here from real estate and facilities, how we can help. Because I give you an example for the real estate. Most of the people, when you go to looking for a new office space, one of the things that the real estate team stay very happy, say, hey, I got some space in the main floor to put our logo. And I say, oh man, this is great. But
so that's signage,
more than that, right?
Yeah, so that's signage. That's a basic, like, that's identification. Those are room numbers. Those, I mean, that's kind of a functional component. Bathrooms that way, conference rooms that way. Like the wayfinding, the signage, that's kind of a basic component. The identification, obviously needed. Branding is that personal connection component. So, and you know, I'm trained as an architect, but what I look at is more so beyond just the architecture. So how do you add value? How do you add connectivity? How do you add this notion of belonging? I mean, I'm so stuck on belonging because if you're going to ask people to go into an office again, they don't really want to go sit at a desk, not talk to anybody, and then go home, because you can have that experience over Zoom or over Slack. So how do you get engagement? How do you get that going? So my fear right now is that when people are looking at office spaces because they're looking to downsize, they're moving away from those social spaces. And those social spaces are very, very important. So if you look at just having a bunch of cubicles, you don't really want people in small breakout rooms until like COVID's completely annihilated, or you have really amazing HVAC systems. So how do you give that space that gives people that comfort level, that also provides them with kind of talking points? Like if you look at the artwork behind me, I've had on many occasions someone's like, "Ooh, where'd you get that? And did you do that? And that's really cool." And those are those talking points, right? That if you can control that messaging, if marketing can come in and say like, "Wow, we really want people to talk about these initiatives." And maybe it's on a digital screen, maybe it's something more permanent, like what we did in Bogota for Johnson & Johnson. How do you bring those realities into play? So facilities need to identify locations. They need to make sure that they've got the budget to pay for the plants, to pay for, you know, the coffee, the kind of the social components, but also identify spaces. And maybe it's community outreach. Maybe, you know, at one location, a corporate office park that I was working on, they had a wall that wanted people to put pictures of their dogs and their cats. And it's like, guess who I belong to? And it was about engagement. So that's also about branding. If your core requirement is that you want this to be a family and you want people to be retained, how do you get people to know each other? So it's about those type of initiatives. Facilities needs to talk to marketing. They need to talk to communications. They need to talk to brand strategy. They need to talk to these larger teams and say, in order for us to help you in the physical space, how can we collaborate to make sure that we get your messaging correctly?
Got it. So you told about the piece of art, the work of art must have a purpose. Right?
It can. I mean, in a conference room, maybe it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
No, I think it really depends on the placement. I think it depends on what the intention is. If you're going into a main lobby space and let's say so Sun Chemical, They're about pigments. That's where they have people sit.
Yeah.
We're just like, this is us. You know, they could have commissioned a local artist to use their pigments and do a painting, but it didn't give the right story.
Right. Great. I got it.
So
So
it's
it must have more than just to put something there, you know, must have a purpose, something that people. I just remember that I visited I think it was the Google office in San Francisco, something like that. They have a lot of piece of arts, but
Yep.
they have a, let's say, explanation on why the piece of art that was there was something that was connected with another thing, and have a lot of
it probably
biophilia.
was data driven.
Yeah.
It probably was data driven over a period of time. And, you
Yeah.
know, it's kind of like how people are knitting these temperature blankets. Like, how are we dealing with global warming? Like, it could be something like that. I mean, it's about placemaking and it's about storytelling. You know, it's really that intersection of those two components is how really successful work is done.
Yeah, and another question that came was pretty much like the branding in the office. It's one of the elements, but you told about the branding in the social media or the
All
internet
connected.
branding. You guys work together to have the same brand, the same message, even in the office than in the internet. Like I have my computer for the company and have a lot of focus in the company culture and everything, and in the computer, because I not go to the office every day. So the the IT team explore to use the branding in the computer, plus facilities explore to have the branding in the office space. So must be together, right?
So in an ideal world, absolutely. Unfortunately, most companies aren't that woven together. So that's like my ask, is to get those people together. What I've had experiences in is that we've been asked to do one very specific thing, like put something on that wall, literally put something on that wall.
Some leaders are focused in the wall, like no, I
Like
need
it's just that wall, and it's like, but you've got this entire experience. How do we leave? Nope, we don't want no timeout. We just want that wall. So the question is, how do you get people to see the larger picture as well as the small minute details? And if you're working with a consultant, you know, they're like, stop the scope creep. But it's our job to like mention, like, have you considered this? Have you considered this? Have you considered how this interacts? Because it's a full 360. So the idea ultimately is that it all comes together.
Yeah, and this is pretty new, Trish, because I just remember when I worked in a bank 30 years ago when I started to work, they have a lot of bank logo in everything, you know, the pen, the table, and have the logo, and say, man, this is so, and the mission in all the floors and all the elevator rooms and everything. So it was a more aggressive than now, that is more softy, but have a purpose behind, something like that, right?
Yes. I mean, you talk about zoning and not being able to have your logo everywhere. I remember when Chase Manhattan Bank wanted to create more surface area for identification, and it got turned down because most zoning's like, nope, you get this much space and that's it. Yeah. So what they did is they worked with the architects to create a soffit behind the glass storefront, and they put a pattern there because it's not on the building, it's on the interior, it's a drop soffit. So I think that people have gotten a little bit more sophisticated, and where people now identify with patterns, they identify with color palettes, they identify, you know, everybody knows every airline's flight attendant when you're walking down trying to catch a plane. I mean, they're iconic. So that's an emotional connection. You recognize that is what a brand is. It's like, oh yeah, I know that. Maybe I like it, maybe I don't, but I know that. So that's what people are really kind of looking for.
Yeah, that's great. So this is why I put in my behind here the logo of Corenet, and the logo sponsors logo. It's just try to use the space of the webinar that was behind was my office space with the logo of our sponsor to have more exposure. So it's common, I understand, but sometimes it's too strong. Like some companies use the logo too much, everything is just the logo. So I think it is boring. You go to the office once, twice, and the third time you say, man, I dream with the logo, that just remember.
And that's a little old school. I think people are getting a little bit more sophisticated and you have to look at advertising campaigns, and they really drove this. I mean, it's like no one needs to see the word Nike. No one needs to see brand names anymore, especially with social media avatars. You just see the emoticon and you know what it is. Yeah. So I think we're in a very interesting space when it comes to messaging and visual messaging as well as verbal messaging. And then there's an entire other discipline of scent, of sound. It's the whole experience is being taken into consideration. That's when people really are doing the 360 view, which is incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. Trish, I think we've gone more than 1 hour. It was great. Just would thank you so much to virtually be in Brazil.
I wish I was in Brazil with you, but someday I'll get there.
In the webinar, but we're great to have you 1 hour with us here in Brazil. It was a great pleasure. I just would like to say thank you for your time, for all the preparation, to be here and share this. And our participants here in Brazil, please, if you think about branding, please talk with Trish, because it's someone that knows very deeply about the subject and can improve the branding for your company very well. So Trish, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So now I speak a little in Portuguese. Pessoal, muito obrigado pela participação de vocês. Na próxima semana, dia 21 de julho, às 5 horas da tarde, nós vamos ter um webinar sobre dados, sobre informação, sobre IT, juntamente com Corporate Real Estate, ou seja, tecnologias que hoje existem para nos ajudar a tomar decisões de Corporate Real Estate. Então, não percam, vai ser muito bacana. 3 palestrantes internacionais fantásticos. E vejo vocês daqui a uma semana. Obrigado por participar e até mais.